In our last video, we focused on the data protection principles. And the first of those principles states that the processing of personal data must be lawful, fair, and transparent. And it's that lawfulness of processing that we're going to discuss in this video. Under Article 6 of the GDPR, there are 6 different legal reasons as to why you can process somebody's personal data. And by personal data, I'm referring to ordinary personal data in this video, not sensitive or special category personal data, which has separate requirements. And as you can see, some of the reasons I've coded green and some are colour coded red. And I'll just tackle the red ones first. These are the ones that ordinarily a school is unlikely to rely on when processing personal data. Contract. So processing is necessary for the performance of a contract with the data subject. With this legal basis, it's more aimed at a consumer type relationship, buying and selling of goods and services. Vital interests, here we're talking about life or death situations. So having to make emergency decisions in relation to saving somebody's life and needing to process their personal data to do that. Legitimate interests, this is one that public authorities shouldn't ordinarily be relying on, and therefore it's more reserved for the private sector. So the ones that you will predominantly be using on a day-to-day basis when processing personal data are these 3. And I'm going to tackle them in this order. I'm going to deal with legal obligation, public task, and then finally consent. Legal obligation is quite self-explanatory. The processing is necessary because you have a legal obligation to do something. A prime example to use with legal obligation would be that of safeguarding. You know that you must safeguard pupils under the Education Act and various regulations. You have a legal obligation to safeguard and protect the welfare of pupils. That's all nicely brought together in the statutory guidance keeping children safe in education. So where you're performing that specific legal obligation and you need to process someone's data in order to do it, well then you're relying on the lawful basis of legal obligation, and that's one that schools will rely on a lot. Very closely linked to that is the lawful basis of public task. So this is a task that's carried out in the public interest and that's underpinned by law. What we're saying with public task is that although there might not be a specific statutory power that you can refer to, there'll generally be an obligation that you need to do something. So we know that schools need to provide a broad and balanced curriculum, provide pastoral support and good communication with parents, for instance. So with public task, if there's a general obligation to do something that's within the remit of what you do as a school, but there might not necessarily be a specific statutory provision that you can refer to, you're most likely to be processing personal data under the lawful basis of public task. It could fall into either one of these 2, but generally these are the ones that you're going to be relying on. Finally, you will also rely on consent for some things. These are things that as a school you don't necessarily need to do. Prime example would be using images, videos of pupils for promotional activities, things on social media, the website, that kind of thing. And we have a whole separate video on consent because it is a very important topic in itself. So to summarise, when schools are processing personal data, the lawful basis that you're most likely to rely on is going to be legal obligation and public task, and then in some instances also consent.